So we are up, we are live. Hi, welcome everybody to SUSE QE Tools workshop. Today, the topic is about enforcing strict warnings in openQA test modules. And we did quite some work there in the past month. So Tina is already sharing screen. Tina, you can go ahead.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, or whatever time it is at your place. First, some questions to wake up. So, who invented Perl? Do you know? If you can write it in the chat if you want. Does anyone know who the Perl inventor is? Some Larry guy. Yeah. So Larry Wall. And do you know which year it was first released? The first Perl version came out in which year?
Maybe turning around the numbers. I would say 1984.
No, but that's close. 1987. And let me prove that to you. Maybe you can see that here. Is that readable?
Yep.
Okay. And at which company was Larry working when he invented Perl? Anyone? One company where a sysadmin was needed. Yeah. It was NASA at the Jet Propulsion Lab. And the latest version, the latest Perl version is Perl 544. And so the thing is, something happened in the 90s. Maybe some of you remember. So there were, so someone invented CGI scripts. Do you know what CGI stands for? So CGI is Common Gateway Interface, and so then web hosters actually popped up and created a possibility for many people who had nothing to do with programming to write CGI scripts, and that was actually Perl. You could also write Bash CGI scripts, but no one did that, I guess. And then there were also guys like Matt, who created a Mad script archive. Maybe some of you remember. So this is, yeah, back into the 90s. And it had a lot of security problems. And yeah, the London Perl mongers actually took the initiative to later rewrite his scripts in a better, secure way. And he admitted also later that he just didn't have enough experience, and recommends the rewritten scripts. But yeah, this is partially where the image of ugly spaghetti code Perl script come from. And actually, I just realized that I didn't share the browser window. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is the web page of Mad Script Archive. And yeah, so Perl was not actually ready for unexperienced people, and so it didn't have strict and warnings, and it was only later added. Second. And then some people actually invented things like Mojo Base, which actually enables strict and warnings at the same time. And you can also use the dash signatures to actually enable subroutine signatures. So this is just a nicer way for the 3 lines, use strict, use warnings, and then use base for a certain module. And that's why we adopted that for our openQA code. And also it's now in Osado in most of the modules. But to actually let you know how it could look like in the future, I would quickly like to show you some examples from after Perl 5.26. So currently we are stuck with Perl 5.26, and actually when researching this, I found out a feature that I actually haven't been using and probably have forgotten. Maybe I saw it a while ago. So I would like to just quickly show you some features in Perl you might not know. So did you know you can create subsets of hashes? Maybe some hands up if you knew this before or you didn't. So no one showing their hand. Okay. But it's readable, right? My terminal window?
Yep.
Okay. So let's run it. And so this is how you can create a subset. So here we have a hash with some funny numbers, and we only want a subset with the bands that start with a single uppercase letter. And this is the subset, so that's quite nice. And now let's jump to Perl 5.28, which we cannot use yet, but this is how it would look like. You can also delete the subset directly, so it's kind of like splitting a hash. So if you run this, we have the removed subset, and then you have the leftover hash. So this is actually pretty nice, and I'm looking forward to using it. And in Perl 5.32, we have the ether operator. Maybe that's not something you would use very often in Osado code, but so there is this function called ether, which checks if an object has a certain class. But if you call that on a normal variable, which is just not an object, this will die, which is not so nice. And in Perl 5.32, you have this operator, which works on every variable and will just return true or false. And there's another thing, chained comparisons. So you can now do several comparisons in one instead of having them together ANDed. Like this. Did any one of you know this? You could even, add more stuff. And in Perl 5.34, the try-catch syntax was introduced. That's the eval thing is, always looks a bit curious and not what you are used to from other languages. And try-catch is nicer, so you have the exception variable or object directly in here. And you have a new way to specify octals So normally you just precede it with a 0 and then it's an octal number. So that's a 15 actually. And now you can specify it with a 0 and an O. And I assume they just copied this from YAML for some reasons. And yeah, signatures were invented in Perl 536, and they are now no longer experimental. So that's why we also can use it already today, but we still need to mark them as experimental because we are not yet in Perl 540. And yeah, use 536 would turn on warnings. Use 5.12 would turn on strict. So you would have both with this. The built-in functions were invented also in 536. So there are a lot of functions. I just have some examples here: true, false, trim, ref type. So finally, Perl has a trim function. And you can also iterate over multiple values. So I guess that's mostly interesting for arrays. So if you have an array where you just want 3 values at a time in a loop, you can now do this, or 4 or 5 or whatever. And then, yeah. And in 538, we have the class syntax. This is still experimental, but yeah, just wanted to show this. You can now specify certain class members, and they just look like normal Perl variables, and then you declare a method, and you can directly access those class members from in here. And you don't even have to use self, but you can if you want. And finally, in Perl 540, there were actually not so much interesting new features, but these are all now stable and enabled. So if you use 540, then you will get strict warning signatures, say, ISA, try, catch, and all the built-in functions. So that's pretty cool. In 542, we also get experimental all and any keywords. So they are actually not in a module you have to import anymore, and that also makes it faster, the implementation. And in 544, we actually have named parameters in signatures. That's also pretty cool, I think. Yeah, could you say a word about signatures? Yeah, what question do you have?
I'm hearing this for the first time, even if I've been programming Perl for a while. But what is a signature?
So that's subroutine signature, like here. And normally you would do this, right? So you either do my $x equals shift, or right. So that's how you know Perl.
It's like a type enforcing on the parameters or something?
No, not type enforcing actually. It's just a nicer way of unpacking. So this is the normal way, and now you can add it directly into the subroutine line. And what it's enforcing is the number of parameters. So in this case, you have apparently you have one parameter, and then the second gets a default. And that is actually telling Perl, okay, this subroutine also only needs one parameter, and the second can be omitted. So you can pass 1 or 2. And if you pass only one, this will get this default value. And unfortunately, we cannot do this in the signature. We have to do this later. But this was actually fixed in a later Perl version. I think actually in Perl 5.36, you could also do this, which is slightly better, but yeah. And you can also add arrays or hashes.
Okay, clear. Thank you.
Okay, some more comments. Giving a try to signatures in Osado. Yeah. Okay, I guess I can look at this later, or
As you said, we have 5.26 as the base version that we should still support. I would say mostly because some production openQA workers that we use within the O3 and OSD structure still use a sleeve 15 base. So that's the Perl version in there.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if I should have a look at the. I can actually quickly show it if you like.
As you like.
Yeah.
Maybe the first file is not so interesting. The second one is just simple.
Yeah, Osado code is already using signatures in some very limited places. We use it consistently in OS Audience and openQA, even enforced by style checks, like everywhere, with really minor exceptions where it's a bit incompatible with the prototype and such. That is part of the interface.
And yes, here the attempt is also to use like named signature, but we don't use it here. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah. And so, like I said, we want to use Mojo base. And you might all notice that I created those pull requests in Osado a while ago. And I also added a little check. And that's make test compile OS Audience. Who of you are actually using this check locally? Raise your hands if you use it sometimes. Or raise your hand if you actually know about it. Yeah, Andrea, Panama. Okay, because this is actually useful locally because it's quite fast. So let's run it.
Yeah, we have to consider that the project is actually huge. So that was a lot.
So yeah, it actually checks 4,600 files. And the reason why it's fast is actually that it checks all test modules in one process. So normally the compile check would create a new process for every Perl file, but that's of course very slow. And yeah, I do it in one process. This cannot catch all the mistakes because of this, but for that we have a fallback compile check that actually does all. And that's actually tools. 1 second. Right, and I invented this exception. So if you add this to a module, it won't actually be checked. And we can actually have have a look at one of those or two.
Talking about
So-
real life examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just remove that comment and run the buttons. So possible precedence problem between blah, blah, blah at line 243. And so this is doing if not in a function call and the result of the function call compared with a regex. And I have to admit, I wouldn't bet on how this behaves actually, but I think it's actually applying the not to the result of the function call, which is probably then just an empty string, because that's what Perl returns as false, which will probably never match this regex. So this might actually be a mistake in a module and someone should have a look at it. So if you grab over all these things in the modules, you can find places that you might want to check actually. Let's
But
quickly have a
still,
look.
I mean, that's much more limited than I would have expected.
What do you mean with
Or
limited?
is this only the first page? No, this is the complete list of all, right?
Well, I can actually show you more because I actually have two check scripts and two
Yeah.
of these, two variants of this. So there
Yeah,
are more,
right. Still
more
compile check.
others.
Mhm.
Because there are still some which are not using strict and warnings. That's the problem, and more than those. Let's have a look at one other, because this is actually something, I mean, if the maintainers of those modules are not here, then maybe, yeah, the wrong audience, but let's have a look at this. So this is MDS-TAA. So I removed the exception here, and now it says subroutine blah, 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 redefined, and also subroutine new redefined. I have to admit, this is a bit misleading warning because it's not a circular dependency here, but something similar. And this is actually, I had to research what's happening here. So this is using several modules, and they are usually, they should be, this is OS AutoInst. This is probably a library module, another library, more library modules. So where, for example, the MDS module, does anyone know where that should be, in which folder? Any guesses? So I searched for it, and apparently it's inside the test folder. And it's, I think, the TAA as well. And this is actually not so nice, because I think all library modules should be in the lib folder to not be confused with test modules. So this is,
Yeah. What do you think was the motivation for the author to do it like that?
well, it gets even weirder. So I'm not sure, because this is not only a library module, but as you can see here, it's also using base console test. So it is a test itself. It even has a run function. And funnily, wait, no. I opened the wrong one, sorry. So here's the MDS module. It's also a test, and it has a run function, yeah. But it's also used as a library, I think, mainly for using this hash. And that means that this module is also called later by my compile check, while it already has been loading before through a different path. And for some reason, this is generating this warning. So I think that's bad in two ways. It's in the wrong folder, and it's used as a library and a test. And I think that's not a good design. And this makes it a bit harder to write such a check. So I had to add these exceptions here. So if you are the maintainer, then please try to fix this.
Yeah. One motivation to put it all in one folder is very likely that Osado is by now has fragmented into user groups that mostly care about their area with their own helpers, their own libs and such. So, putting everything into one folder lib is, of course, what people, try to avoid. Of course, we can provide like multiple lib folders in subdirectories or the other way around, like subfolders within the lib folder to structure it.
Yeah, but I mean, usually Perl modules are also not just called with one word, so they would usually have several words to make it a bit more speaking. And this way, it could all be in the lib folder, but just with longer names. And but we actually OS Auto encouraged it because we automatically add. So if we load a module like this, then we automatically put this path into the inc directory. So we allow loading modules from this directory. So that's actually not a good decision. And we might, if this is at some point fixed, we might change the behavior in OS Auto Inst to forbid that. But as I said, I also have this other check. Now I have to actually make test still have changes. Oh. Test check strict. And this is actually checking if all the modules are using Mojobase. And it can also, if not, it can also change that. So this takes a bit longer, but it's still not horrible. And actually this check is already doing the change, and it found one module. And that's because I actually just fixed this. In the latest version, I have to make a pull request because before this was calling the syntax which works in Z-shell to find every PM file. But in the make file, actually, it wouldn't work like that. So it was just doing PM files under one level of directories. And so I changed that to use find. And it will just directly write the change. And in CI, it will then fail if it made any changes. So it changes any use base or use parent statement to use Mojobase. And the script is in OS Autoenst. And here we also have this exception. And now, Oliver, you will see yeah, tests.
So how many was that?
27.
Okay, still manageable in theory.
Yeah. I could, of course, remove this from one of the scripts and then run it again. I think there already popped up. Yeah. And then I could run the compile check again and see what's happening. Well, that's cool. So in this case, actually, it wasn't necessary anymore. Maybe it was a leftover or someone fixed something. So that was easy, right? Yeah, so these are the two checks, and I showed you the leftovers you might want to fix. Are there any questions about these tools?
Yeah, I have two questions. Yeah, two questions in the chat. One,
Do you have a single regex to grab all of the possible suppressions? No, because these are two different scripts. So unfortunately not.
is
But I
it
can,
always double hash no and something, or
Yeah. You can combine that into one.
yeah, that's actually a good idea. Yeah. And they are implemented in the scripts. So one script is in the Osado directory, the compile check. And there you have it. And there's unfortunately, there's no option to, when you run the test, but the strict module actually has an option. So you can actually use --force. And I actually found a typo when reviewing this yesterday. This should be a -f, of course, not a -v. And then it will ignore those. So that's convenient. So yeah, so that should answer your second question, where this is
yes?
implemented. Any more questions?
And do we have this tool also part of the GitHub action, GitHub workflow we are running at each PR, or not yet?
Yeah, it's running in every pull request. So for new modules you add, you will have both checks. So it will check if it is using Mojobase for strict, and it will check, it will do the compile check. Yeah.
Thank you.
And also for existing modules, of course. Yeah. The cool thing would, of course, be in the future, you could just use this, and then we have all strict warnings and try catch and the other stuff. And then the only thing we would have to use is the use base. But yeah, we cannot do that for now. We might have to wait until 2030, but not sure. Any more questions? Should I maybe document this in a better way so you know where to call that compile check locally?
I think it's reachable enough. I mean, there are also other checks in the Osado repository which follow a similar theme. So if people would want to call different scripts locally, they would know. I assume that for most, they would create a pull request and then maybe it fails and then they say like, okay, how can I reproduce it locally to verify my fix?
Yeah. Are there other suggestions that you would like to see or anything? We still have a bit of time.
I have a, tell me if it is out of topic, but I'm interested to understand better what we need to take care when we manage the Perl version. We talk about something like some worker still have older version.
Yes.
How it works?
What works?
I mean, okay, we have some workers with older Perl version, but why we do not update it, for example?
Because
it's very naive question.
Yeah,
So
that's related to you might know the story of Power 8 KVM. That is the blocker there.
okay.
So we can't update it because testing teams need this outdated resource, and so far they are refusing to look into more modern options. So that means we need to see if we can maybe run Tumbleweed on those machines because we have to skip Leap 16, which doesn't support that model of architecture. And that might be the option, or the alternative is to just wait it out until we don't have to run tests anymore for older product versions, which also need to stay on that older Power 8 architecture model. And then we would be able to get rid of backward compatible code. However, we can mostly, you know, the newer Perl versions make something non-experimental, which is already there for many years. And there are many things which one can use, maybe with some compatibility model and all that. So generally, it shouldn't really hold you back, except for maybe this, you know, /= in the signatures. Tina, I guess something like that is not really supported by backward compatibility module, is it? Or I couldn't
No, not
imagine how
really.
that would work.
Yeah. So that's the good thing about experimental features. So if the Perl version comes out with an experimental feature, you're on your own first because you don't know if it will stay or if it will get dropped or slightly changed.
Yes.
But once you know, okay, 10 versions later, it is actually stable, then you can already use it. You just have to use
Right.
this.
So
Yeah.
we know that certain features are not experimental anymore in the current most recent Perl version. That means on the older Perl version, like in hindsight, you can freely use this experimental feature because you know it will become it's like it is already standard in newer versions anyway.
And that's actually also like the try catch feature, for example. There is this compatibility module which you can use for try catch, and so this just mimics the behavior in older versions. And if you use this module on the latest version, then it will automatically use the built-in try catch. So this is actually added by the same. So the module was written by the same guy who implemented this feature in Perl. And so this should should work fine. And so, yeah, we are using the try feature in our openQA code already a lot. There's also a module for the same kind of module for classes, but I would say we shouldn't yet go to using classes, although they look pretty nice.
Yeah, I would say overall it's likely less effort if we helped together towards the goal to cut the older ends and then just rely on 540 plus when we don't need to support this older hardware and operating system basis.
Okay, any more questions? Then thank you for listening. And yeah, just let me know if you have any more questions about the scripts when you run them. You know where to find me in Slack. Or
Thank you,
other
Tina.
team members. Thank you for listening.
So just a short teaser for what will come next. This was the session about enforcing strict and warnings in openQA test modules. And the next one will be SUSE QE Tools roadmap discussion, where we can quickly walk over all the features that we have done in this 2 months period, important changes and such, as well as looking forward. On the 28th of August, that slot is still free. So if anybody would like to talk about a certain feature, feel welcome to add yourself to the list or approach me. But it might also be that because this is a bit in summer vacation period, that in case we don't find a slot, we will just skip that. And then the next would be start of September from Pavel Dostal about openQA job group summary, aka the web version of openQA Mon, aka Raven QM SUSE CZ openQA AI. Also looking forward to hear about that one. So with that, thank you guys and goodbye.